Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, July 21st. Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. We have one item on our agenda today, and that is the Planning Board draft of the Master Plan of Highways and Transportation, a 2025 technical update. And the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways, serves as the comprehensive inventory of significant existing and planned roadways and transitways in Montgomery County. Fun fact, the Master Plan of Highways was approved and adopted first in 1931, shortly after the creation of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission in 1927. So almost 100 years for park and planning. Technical update to the plan was last adopted in 2018, and since then it has been amended by a number of master plans like the Silver Spring Downtown and Adjacent Communities Plan in June of 2022, and the functional plans of the Corridor Forward and the I-270 Transit Plan in May of 2022. And this technical update in 2025 to the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways is needed in order to reflect the county's approval of two laws, including the Complete Streets Design Guide and the Street and Road Classification. While most of the changes are technical in nature, this plan also proposes the removal of the northern section of the Mid-County Highway Extended, otherwise known as M83, a long-standing unbuilt project subject to decades of public discussion, detailed study, and more conversation that will ensue today. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kenny, unless colleagues have any other comments.
Thank you. I will note that planning is here and has a presentation to walk through the scope of the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways. So if you'd like, we can start with that, or we can dive into it.
If everybody could introduce themselves, and then we will get into the presentation. We'll start with Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Artie here as Chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board. So I'd like to be here, and thank you for council staff for their hard work on preparing the presentation for today. And we're here to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Richard Brockmeyer, Transportation Planning Supervisor with County Planning.
David Anspacher, I'm the Chief of the Transportation Planning Division.
Sophia Aldrich, I'm the Project Manager also from the Transportation Planning Division.
Fantastic. Thank you. With that, if you want to begin your presentation.
Great. Good morning. For the record, my name is Sophia Aldrich with the Montgomery Planning Department, Transportation Planning Division. I am the project manager for this master plan. Today we have prepared a brief but detailed presentation to summarize the intent of the master plan and project task guiding this effort. So the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways, and we often refer to it as the MPOHT, but I'm going to try not to use that. I'll just say the master plan. Is really a constantly evolving countywide master plan that contains all transportation recommendations as recommended in all active master plans in the county. As such, it is a living document. When we get done with this technical update, we still continue to maintain it, and it's a challenge. Every time a master plan is completed, we have to update all of our maps, both online maps and static maps as well. Certainly, as Councilmember Glass mentioned, why do we need it? The update is this time around is closely linked with the adoption of the Complete Streets Design Philosophy, which was initially adopted by the Planning Board, Montgomery Planning, and the Montgomery County Department of Transportation in mid-2021. But with the council action in 22 and initiation in 23, with the approval of bills 2422 and 3422, it became part of county law on February 7th of 2023. The reason for this master plan technical update was to help finalize this transition. So how do we do this transition? We had a plan, and the plan involved three different phases. This is currently the third phase. With phase one was essentially initiating the change in terms of the street classifications from our old system, which was very much a roads, car-centric vision, to a complete streets multimodal vision. The second phase evaluated the land use context, particularly with respect to pedestrians and connectivity, and identified area types that were different from what was used before in the county. And the third phase is the final step that we're in now, which is really to confirm the street classifications that were created by the translations from the county bills. And we spent time to look at, do they all make sense? Sometimes translations are imperfect. So I think what's really important is that the street classifications that we have used are established based on two characteristics: land use context and street function. That's really what makes the master plan really adopting complete streets. So from phase two, these are the area types that Complete Streets uses here in Montgomery County. 5 different area types ranging from the highest density downtown areas, which pretty much used to be our old urban areas in the old road code, town centers, less dense, and in the pedestrian master plan, we added quite a few town centers. And town centers probably have such a variety. They range from places in Damascus to Kensington, et cetera. And then the country area is very, very similar to the old rural area, and the suburban is everything else. So our scope of work led to several tasks that guided our efforts. Oops, somehow I went backwards. There we go. So task 1 was, really with the full incorporation of the Complete Streets design philosophy. We really needed to look at, does everything make sense? And one thing I think that this graphic, which is originally in the Complete Streets design guide, the second version, it illustrates how classification has evolved to consider both the road function and surrounding land use context when determining master plan transportation recommendations. So as an example on this slide, and I don't know if doesn't show up that well, so I apologize for that. Here, this is downtown on the land use context, down to country, sort of showing how development intensity goes from less to greater, and street function goes from streets to connectors to boulevards to highways. So for a downtown street, for instance, these are streets that are located in the downtown, but they have the function of a two-way street providing local access. Then another example would be a country connector, which is a street in the country area, but it provides more of a longer distance travel, which tends to have slightly higher speeds as well. This is a screenshot from our Complete Streets webpage, and sometimes when we talk about the master plan of highways and complete streets, they're intrinsically linked. To help the public understand the Complete Streets concept, the why, our communications division created these short informational videos. I'd like to play 2 videos. They take about 4 minutes in total, because I think they provide an extremely clear explanation of street classification and also and the land use context. So I'll play them now. First one.
In Montgomery County, streets are classified based on their location in the county and how travelers use them. Why do we classify streets? A streets classification represents the county's vision for the street and guides the design of new streets, all to make our transportation system safer and to better serve the public. One way we classify streets is the type of land uses that surround them. In other words, the land use context. As shown here,
Goody Drive, and in the county's Air Park area. Country areas are the least dense portions of the county, with low-intensity, single-family residential development, agriculture, and naturally forested hills and stream valleys. The country type accounts for over half of the county's land area. Street classifications are also assigned based on their street function, which is described on a scale of more or fewer intersections and driveways. Streets are the most common street type within the county and are intended to provide local access to property and circulation within a small area. They have 2 lanes and intersections, and streets tend to be closely spaced. Connectors are 2 to 3 lane streets that typically provide connections between local streets and boulevards. Connectors are generally present only in suburban and country areas. Boulevards are 4 to 6 lane roads with medians that carry medium distance strips between activity centers. They are intended to be tree-lined thoroughfares that encourage multimodal travel. Highways are 4 to 8 lane, high-speed roads that carry longer distance trips between activity centers in Montgomery County and surrounding jurisdictions in the DC region. Learn more about street classifications in Montgomery County by visiting montgomeryplanning.org/complete streets.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lakeisha Hull. I am the Planning Director for Prince George's County. You are here for session number 10 of the Brown Bag Series.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And we'll play the second video, which is very short.
Have you ever seen the magic glasses that can see clearly without glasses? This glasses can not only see far away, but also see near. This smart zoom glasses from Japan are really great. No need to wear lenses. The degree can be used from 100 degrees to 700 degrees. The glasses will automatically adapt to your vision, can see clearly far away and near, and are very...
Downtown boulevards are the highest intensity streets in the county, with a bustling mix of vehicle traffic, dense development, walking, bicycling, and transit. Downtown boulevards are located in the most densely developed areas of the county, with a bustling mix of vehicle traffic, dense development, walking, as well as Georgia.
Okay.
Best laid plans.
It's great.
I think we can just end this at this point. So I'll go back to this. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for your patience. Best laid plans don't always work.
First video was great.
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, I think what's great about his communications is a really important part of our job, and so Bridget, one of our assistant directors, did the voiceover for that. She did an amazing job explaining how we do that. So I'll go into the second task, which was target speeds. A second important concept from Complete Streets is target speeds. Target speeds is really a long-term vision of where we would like to see typical travel speeds reach to help make all streets safer and usable by all travel modes. This is a relatively new concept in transportation engineering and planning, one that we only started addressing in 2013. And as a result, many of our older master plans do not currently have target speed recommendations. Target speeds, as I said, are long-term goals. They need to be tailored to the street based on street function and land use context. And they can be influenced by the transportation users expected to use the facility. So that's what they are. What are they not? So with the bills, county bills enacted in 2023, maximum target speeds were identified for each complete street type. These target speeds were developed during the work program for the Complete Streets Design Guideline, adopt a Vision Zero approach to slowing traffic down. These target speeds are really master plan goals. And that's what this master plan is hoping to, finally enable that. No speed limits, however, are changed by a master plan specifically. The establishment of posted speed limits is the responsibility of Montgomery County DOT, on county streets and SHA on state highways. The intent of a target speed is to guide future street improvements to help reduce the posted speed to get closer to the target. As a goal, it is recognized that not all street sections may actually achieve the target speed, and certainly not overnight. We found this during our outreach. A lot of people would say, please don't raise my speed or lower the speed of my street. We said, well, we're not doing that. We're just setting a goal. So a major effort of this technical update was the addition of target speed recommendations so that it would be located on almost all streets that didn't currently have master plan recommendations for target speeds. This turned out to be 47% of all street segments, which is also 56% of all county street mileage, which is a lot, 647 miles. The third task we looked at was the development of new tools that will ultimately be added into the Complete Streets Design Guide with the creation of a new street type to consider along growth corridors. A recommendation in Thrive Montgomery 2050, growth corridors are envisioned to be a focus of future land use and public infrastructure planning, envisioned to accommodate growth for new residents and improve quality of life for existing residents, provide high-quality transit infrastructure, including bus rapid transit, and facilitate high levels of walking and bicycling. Currently, the master plan of, currently the majority of the county's growth corridors are located in suburban areas and designated as boulevards. And boulevards have the following characteristics. You can see up above, target speeds of 35 miles per hour, but actual speeds maybe much higher today. Protected crossing spacings, master plan between 800 to 1,600 feet apart, which means that some people would need to walk around 2 to 3 minutes out of their way to get to a traffic signal to safely cross the street. And so those unwilling to walk that extra distance would likely cross the street in an unprotected location. To improve the safety of growth corridor boulevards, given a higher projected level of pedestrian and bicycle activity, the growth corridor boulevard would have slightly different characteristics. The first is a lower target speed from 35 to 30, and the second would be a reduced protected crossing spacing down to 600 feet, which essentially is it's not as close as a downtown boulevard, but it provides a reasonable distance that people can walk quickly. And this master plan helps create these new tools to help apply these slower target speeds and allow for more frequent protected crossings as part of future master plans. The growth corridor boulevard street type is applicable to areas planned for moderate to high density only. And the key thing about introducing this concept is that this master plan does not designate growth corridor street types to the master plan of highways to any particular street. It is a tool for future master plans. The council will ultimately decide where to apply growth corridor areas and boulevards in future master plans, and so we developed this tool to present as part of this master plan. Oops. Back up. All right, task 4, introduced in the technical update, is really a cleanup exercise to ensure that transit master plan recommendations are consistent with ongoing Montgomery County DOT transit planning and design. There's a lot of work going on and a lot of interim steps as we advance from the broad vision from a master plan to actually implementing bus rapid transit service. So we want to make sure that what we've discovered is consistent in our master plans, because some of those master plan recommendations can be used to get developer contributions, and we want to make sure they're in the right place. The last major task was added to the scope of work during the project. You know, a key issue that came out of most of the testimony, including from the county executive and the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, was a request to remove the unbuilt sections of Mid-County Highway Extended, also known as M83, from the master plan. And I'll turn it back to you folks for discussion, but what I will mention is that as part of Task 5, we had a lot of outreach. We had 2 extra master plans. We put a lot into really trying to hear the message of the citizens, both pro and con, and we hope that we did it adequately. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Aldrich, for that presentation, the video, and the PowerPoint slides as well. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments before we start our discussion. Okay, Mr. Kenny, you want to start walking us through the packet and the various decision points that we have?
Sure, happy to. So starting with the, so we'll start on the recommendations of the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways 2025 technical update. Start Chapter 5. This is the bulk of the plan, and all of the recommendations are in here. Recommendation 5A deals with the removal of street segments. There are, I believe, 5 or 4 street segments, small segments that are being removed. That are proposed to be removed: DuPont Avenue in Kensington, Elton Road in Hillendale, Rosedale Avenue in Bethesda, and Walsh Street in Chevy Chase. These are segments that were in business center districts prior to the Complete Streets Design Guide, have been reclassified to be just outside of downtowns, and so this is effectively a sort of a technical cleanup exercise to make sure that these segments are classified right and that our downtown boundaries match what is in the pedestrian master plan. Sorry.
Is that it for 5A?
That is, the other component of 5A has to deal with Mid-County Highway Extended.
So let's pause where you pause. That's what I was just checking on. So 5A.1, right. Thank you for that. The most technical of technical updates, again, which was the purpose of this policy change, makes sense. I know some of it's in your district. Yes, we're good. We're unanimous with adopting recommendation 5A1. Now let's go to the other half of that recommendation.
Thank you. This is, as you mentioned, a technical update, which means that all of the scope with which planning started work on this had to do with implementing previous policy. But as planning staff mentioned, due to public interest and input, the planning board broadened the scope of the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways update to include the question of whether to remove the planned but unbuilt sections, particularly the northern section of Mid-County Highway Extended, or also known as M83. Bottom line is the recommendation does the planning board does recommend the removal of this northern section of Mid-County Highway, which would extend 5.7 miles from its current terminus at Montgomery Village Avenue, west and north across Great Seneca Park, northwest through the North Germantown Greenway, to connect with Ridge Road, Maryland 27 in Clarksburg. Planning board opted to retain the southern section, which would connect the current alignment of Mid-County Highway to the Maryland 200, the ICC, intercounty corridor, or intercounty connector. Their recommendations also include a comprehensive study of travel needs along the Clarksburg to Germantown corridor. These recommendations are depicted in Figure 1 on page 3 of the packet, which depicts the map and what the planning board is recommending to do with each of the sections of the planned Mid-County Highway Extended. So due to the great public interest. This was the topic of the vast majority of the testimony the council received, both through correspondence and at the public hearing on July 8th. Planning staff or council staff has prepared some background and an analysis of the history of the study of this corridor for the committee's context. So M83 was added to the Clarksburg, Germantown, and Gaithersburg vicinity master plans through the late 60s and early 70s. It was initially proposed as a 150-foot wide 6-lane parallel highway, counterpart to the Great Seneca Highway, to provide enhanced north-south vehicular travel to the up-county area on the east side of I-270. Other than being reduced to 4 lanes over the course of its study, in this extension has remained unchanged essentially from its initial planning. The genuine facility planning for this road began in 2004, in which and shortly after which the planning efforts were broadened to include the entire corridor between Montgomery Village, Germantown, and Clarksburg to evaluate all transportation options. At the same time that this study was happening, which I'll get into in a minute, the Clarksburg experienced a great deal of expansion and development through residential density, supported by the construction of other master planned road projects like Ridge Road, Stringtown Road, Snowden Farm Parkway, Little Seneca Parkway, and Broadway Avenue to support these areas. And as development has continued in that part of the up-county, motor vehicle congestion through the mid-county corridor, as we're referencing here, has grown substantially, which was another topic brought up in public hearing. These various needs for transportation capacity in the mid-county and up-county were consolidated into the mid-county corridor study, which is sort of a broad terminology for an ongoing study that was multiple rounds of analysis and public hearing from 2007 to 2017, when the council ultimately decided to move away from utilizing M83 in planning efforts. So a brief overview of what was in those various rounds of studies. This is, in more detail in the staff report. I won't go into it in overwhelming detail. Figure 2 gives a timeline, and then there's some further detail on what was studied. But essentially, there were reports issued in 2012 and 2015 that selected that affirmed the master plan alignment of M83 as the best option when compared with various other intersection improvements and widenings and new road construction along the corridor. These alternatives are listed on the bottom of page 4 and mapped out, pulled from the 2015 study on the top of page 5. Alternative 9A, which is again the master plan alignment, and what you see on page 3 as the current what's in the master plan of highways and transitways, was selected due to its top performance on travel time and relieving intersection congestion. This alternative at the time was projected to cost $357 million to build. That was a 2015 number, so it would likely be larger today by a good deal, and was projected to add 7.2 acres of impervious surface and impact 72.9 acres of forest, much of which includes wetlands. This was the topic of much of the public hearing testimony opposed to M83 that the council heard. So that's where we have that kind of information from. After this 2015 study was when bus rapid transit along Maryland 355 was adopted into area master plans, sort of giving another element to consider for capacity through this mid-county corridor. As a result, MCDOT was asked to prepare a supplement to the 2015 mid-county corridor study to address the relationship between M83 and the Maryland 355 BRT. These scenarios are included on page 6, as well as their performance scenario. The scenario in which BRT was included, and the scenario that was eventually selected includes BRT as well as a number of road and intersection improvements throughout the corridor that were identified in the 2015 study. These various improvements are summarized on Table 4 on the bottom of page 7 of the staff report, bottom of page 7 over to the top of page 8. So these are, you can think of these as, when combined with Maryland 355 BRT as what was selected in 2017 as the preferred alternative to handling capacity, alternative to M83. As a result of this study, as I mentioned before, the council passed a resolution directing the planning board not to include M83 in traffic capacity calculations for future master plans. It also affirmed the council's support for M83 as the priority, or not M83, the council's support for Maryland 355 as the priority for improving capacity in the up-county region between intersection improvements and bus rapid transit. Bottom of page 8 includes an overview of the right-of-way for this stretch of planned but unbuilt road. There is only 25% of this right-of-way is privately owned, 29% is already dedicated through development, and 47% is publicly owned through parks or existing roadway. This is useful to know to understand the impact of removing M83 from the master plan on highways and transitways, which does not preclude the county from building this road in the future, but does open this existing right-of-way up to abandonment, which would make any construction of this roadway in the future much more difficult, and would remove it kind of finally from planning documents. The topic that came up in the planning board work sessions, there's also a bikeway trail plan to run along this corridor. No matter what the council does on this M83 recommendation, the county's interest in the right-of-way for the bikeway will remain preserved. There's an overview of the public testimony and correspondence that the council received. This was as of early last week. Public testimony continues to roll in through correspondence, but there's an overview of what we had at the time. Among the groups testifying in opposition to the planning board's recommendations was the Up-County Citizens Advisory Board in the city of Gaithersburg, which cited traffic congestion as a reason to keep M83. Since prior to the public hearing, the county executive and Montgomery County Department of Transportation also transmitted a memo supporting the planning board's recommendation to remove a portion of M83, the northern portion of M83. All of these items of correspondence are included in the staff report. I will also note that shortly after the staff report was posted, council received a fiscal impact statement from the county executive for this plan, which results in a savings of about $655 million. This is primarily driven by the fact that the estimated cost of building the northern portion of M83 is now $509 million, so that would remove that cost. And then the collective cost of, there's a couple lanes to be removed in the next section on Wisteria Drive and Waring Station Road. We'll get into that in a minute, but that's what's driving the rest of the fiscal impact statement while we're mentioning it. So all of this is to say the council staff recommendation is to concur with the planning board's recommendation, 5.A, and removing the paragraph recommending a new comprehensive study of travel needs, given the numerous rounds of previous study. Council staff feels that this is adequate to address adequate in that, once built out, is an adequate scenario, and provides all the information we need. But if the comprehensive study is to be retained, council staff recommends that it could be limited to an updated implementation timeline for the roadway and transitway improvements identified in scenario 1 of the 2017 supplemental Mid-County Corridor Study, and this is, you can see those summarized in addition to the BRT. Those are summarized on Table 4, bottom of page 7 of the staff report.
Very thorough, Mr. Kenny. Thank you for that. The history of this proposal is well documented in this staff packet, so thank you very much for that. I want to start the conversation by turning it over to Chair Harris and get the Planning Board's perspective on the document as originally written and proposed by the Planning Department, which did not include this recommendation. So, Chair Harris, can you share the thought of you and your colleagues when you started reviewing the original document and how you came to add this portion regarding M83?
Yeah, I mean, you mean the portion that we said a study should be done, or originally we looked at both the upper level and the lower level and felt that due to environmental reasons and because of what the council had said in their 2017 letter about that we should not be looking at M83 when we're making recommendations on new roadway infrastructure, and from what the other technical information we've gotten from our planning department, that we concurred that we recommend removing the northern portion, but keep the southern portion because we thought that it did have some, it would be helpful in transportation routing around where the inter-county connector would be. It would be helpful in that area. So that's what we did. But we also, as they said, we had several outreach with the community. We even went up to Germantown and had a public hearing there. And we know that in the northern portion, there are some congestions in the northern portion. And so that's why we recommended that through some further study, we know that we want to have M83 removed, but we thought that with some intersection improvements, possibly intersection improvements and other things, that we need to study that it could make it better for the Clarksburg and Germantown people. But I'd like to have my staff provide more technical discussion on that, please.
Oops. Again, David Anspach for the record. So, correct. This project originally had 4 or 5 tasks. When we took the project to the planning board for the public testimony, we had extensive public testimony on the plan, and 95% of that testimony was on something, M83, that the plan had nothing to do with. And so the planning board asked the staff for a recommendation on how we should move forward. Because of the 2017 resolution that the council approved, and due to guidance in the Climate Action Plan and Thrive Montgomery, staff felt that it was appropriate to consider removing Mid-County Highway, the northern extension of Mid-County Highway, from the plan. The planning board then had what we believe is very extensive outreach. We held 2 additional planning board hearings, so for a total of 3. One of those hearings was in Germantown, so the planning board went to the community. Sophia Aldrich, myself, MCDOT staff participated in a number of meetings with the up-county community to gather their feedback. And so all of that led to the recommendation to ultimately remove the northern segment.
And I will mention that we had 2 in-person outreach meetings. We had 1 virtual outreach meeting, and I believe I participated in a virtual meeting with the UCAB as well. And that was in addition to all the other coordination that we did, previously. It was very much focused on this issue.
Thank you. So I just want to summarize what I heard. that the planning department put forward the recommendation, then public hearing was had. There was a lot of voices that were asking for M83, the northern section, to be removed. And then the planning board asked the department to review that further. And then extensive conversations, both in the planning building and also in the community. Fast forward, and we're now here discussing this. Does that capture it correctly? Okay. In reviewing this proposal, what struck me was the fact that M83 was originally proposed in the 1960s, long time ago, and has had nearly 35 years of analysis. And as was just noted, there have been a series of policy decisions made in Rockville to lead the planning board to make the decision that they did. Not only the removal of consideration for future development, and I want to hit that point in a second, but Thrive and a few other environmental proposals too. To go back to the decision to remove the unbuilt road for consideration in future projects, what does that mean from a technical and planning perspective when the planning department and board are instructed not to consider a transitway?
As part of every master plan that the planning department prepares, we're required by the old bed committee to do analysis that looks at the transportation and land use balance. There are 5 metrics that we're required to evaluate. Those look at travel time for automobiles and for transit. Those look at our non-auto driver mode share metric, the percentage of people that are not driving alone in a car. It looks at bicycle access. It looks at vehicle miles traveled, and among other metrics. For each master plan, we run a number of scenarios looking at how those metrics perform in the local area. Do the recommendations in the master plan, the combination of the new land use and the new transportation recommendations, do those result in metrics that we think are appropriate in terms, again, of vehicle miles traveled, non-auto driver mode share, bike access, travel time, and other things.
Thank you for that. And then last question, then I'll turn over to colleagues. What are the other roads that have been in the planning process, have been on the books, have been in maps, and have been used for various purposes of the similar scale that have not been built, right? Because this is not alone, right? We see Director Sartori is coming up.
So I will say that there are, the first one is Observation Drive Extended. That's been in the master plan for quite a while, and it has actually, it's now going through facility planning at DOT. There are other smaller segments. For instance, we have some recommendations to widen and relocate portions of Falls Road, several different locations. And we have the Montrose Parkway connection, essentially, which would create a new route to divert traffic off Randolph Road to get it to an intersection at Parkland, which is a major recommendation that has not proceeded. And I'm trying to think of, that's probably it. There are a bunch of little ones, but in terms of just the sheer size of it, most of our big roads we've built.
So thank you for that. And so Observation Drive, really important one. I think of all the projects you identified, that's the only one that's actually got funding and is moving forward. And I will say I have supported that project every year since I've been on the council, recognizing the needs of Up County and recognizing that particular project and its utility within the greater area. And there had been CIPs in which the county executive had removed funding for it. And this committee, previous council, I think in the last year or two, we also again made decisions where we restored that funding, recognizing there is tangible need. And what I see is the question before us is, at what point do we recognize something doesn't have funding, something isn't going to move forward, and we remove it entirely from our records? That's, as I see it, the decision point. Being honest with our residents that decisions have been made along the way, budgets have been made, and there is no funding and there's no interest in building something, and basically being honest. I think that's the decision that we're up against.
Sure. For the record, Jason Sartori, Planning Director. I just want to kind of play off of that a little bit, and I think what you've just described, that question of at what point, M83 is unique in that that point was really pointed out to us in 2017 when the council directed us to not consider it in our plans and in our reviews. And so we haven't really had such an extensive and clear point of, you know, this is not going to happen type of point for any of those other roads just yet. And so if we were to kind of look at those, we would need to have an understanding of what the council's direction is on what is something that will never see the light of day in the CIP, or we want to keep in because it might, even if it takes a couple decades. The other thing I just wanted to kind of clarify on, or kind of expand upon, that Mr. Ansbacher mentioned, all of those analyses that he mentioned that we do for our master plans, when it comes to an analysis in an area near where M83 is or would be, we don't include that because that's what we were directed. So those analyses that we do for every single master plan, right now we do those as if M83 will never happen.
Thank you very much, Director Sartori. I'll turn it over. Do you want to go first? I was going to say to the district council member, yes.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think everybody knows where I stand on this, and I've been working on this project for about 20 years, and every time that I've publicly spoken about the project, I've been limited to 3 minutes. Today, I'm not. So, just want to point that out. And I just, can you make copies? I'm trying to reach out to staff, and they haven't received anything, so sorry about that. The scope. So I just wanted to start with that. And to clarify how it went down, the original public hearing, there were only people there to request that it be taken out because that wasn't the scope of the master plan. Is that correct?
That's correct, and also because that wasn't part of the scope, there was no recommendation to remove it, so the only people who felt, I think, the need to come out and speak about it were people who wanted to see it removed.
Right, and there was no communication to the Clarksburg, the most impacted area. There was no communication beforehand that this was going to be a topic of the public hearing.
Specifically that, no. And folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the point there was that because that was the overwhelming amount of testimony that was received, the board asked us if we could look into that before we proceed. And so we were actually intending to bring this to you all months and months ago. But it was delayed because we then said, okay, let's take a step back and now consider this. Now that it was in response to the testimony that was received, also knowing that it wasn't the testimony we received was not representative of everyone in the community, so we wanted to hear more.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the response from Mr. Ansbacher and Ms. Aldrich in reaching out to the community, and that was important. So if 5 or 6 or 10 people had come to that hearing and said remove Falls Road, what would the response have been? Or the Montrose Parkway pieces, would the same process have taken place?
So I'll start and then I'll defer to the chair. I would imagine that the board probably would have directed us in the same way to take some time to take a look at that, given we try to be responsive to what we hear in our public meetings, but also in the testimony we receive.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then,
I would agree with that. Yeah, if we had heard that, we would have said, let's go back and hear from the community.
and then when you heard from the community, both in the listening sessions or the town halls and the subsequent public hearings, and thank you for having that in the up-county, it was a more balanced response, correct? So the original point of some people in the community wanted it out, which is what you first heard, and then you later heard that a lot of people wanted it in. That didn't sway your mind to maybe we should look at this more thoroughly and not particularly in this technical update? I guess I'm just questioning the why take it out now without having a full understanding of what is the capacity now?
Well, maybe I can chime in. I think, again, the northern segment of Mid-County Highway is quite different from any other road in the unbuilt road in the master plan, in that the council has directed the planning board to assume it is not in the master plan, essentially. So the main thing that I think that the staff was reviewing and ultimately the planning board was, do we want to preserve the right-of-way for this road? That's the main decision, I think, that is to be made. The council has already more or less stated that it has no intent to build this road. It has told the planning board, assume it's not there. So the only thing that this road is doing in the master plan now is holding on to some right-of-way. As was stated, with or without the road, some of the right-of-way will continue to be preserved because there remains a bikeway along the alignment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So the right-of-way, the pieces of the right-of-way that would be subject to abandonment, when would that, so if the M83 is taken out, does the abandonment occur right away, or is the decision of whether the bikeway is going to be built? At what point does the abandonment process occur?
Abandonments occur at the behest of an adjacent property owner. If no adjacent property owners are looking to are looking for an abandonment, nothing happens. It is a process. It does have a cost. If the segment of the alignment is in public use, and there are some segments that are in public use, there's a portion of it connects to Middlebrook Road and is functioning today as a local two-lane road, that would go through council review. If it's not in current use, it would go to planning board review. The master plan does not identify the right-of-way for a bikeway. Talking internally, we probably would assume that right-of-way is about 40 to 50 feet out of the total right-of-way of 150 feet.
Okay. And so most likely removing M83, so not only will the community lose the potential of that, there's no guarantee that a bikeway would happen, so that most likely that bikeway that may go to an off-trail bike path, so the community's losing that asset as well.
The decision to construct the bikeway would be the council's, I believe, if there was funding provided for that.
Okay, thanks. And then in terms of the studies that were summarized, I appreciate all those. I was present for many of that. But I think it's important that we can't look at, when we look at the studies, the only thing that we can look at is a no build versus M83. And I'm not going to belabor the point. I know where everybody stands. But nothing most of the promised Most of the alternatives haven't happened. So comparing M83 to BRT makes no sense at all because none of it occurred. So I think that's important. Thank you. And I just wanted to say that. Two things in the report, in the packet, that I want to point out, and Mr. Kenny did a great job of looking at the proposed improvements. I think one very critical clarification is the funding for BRT North is based on the toll lanes from I-270. So all the testimony that we heard to talk about transit, the transit alternative, just everybody understand that if you're, thank you, if you're supporting the transit alternative, you are supporting the toll lane on I-270 because that's what's going to pay for it. Ms. Peckett.
Sorry. Hi, Haley Peckett, Deputy Director for MCDOT. I was not here for some of the previous CIP conversations, but currently the 355 North has only been funded for 35% design. It's actually one of our lowest cost BRT projects, and we will have the opportunity in the upcoming FY27 CIP. But we have been talking with MDOT in terms, but at this point we've removed some of those op lanes fundings and are in the process of removing further from our budget because there is not an immediate plan to move forward with that project. In the way it was envisioned, it'll look different, and we're including those different funding sources in our future budget conversations.
Thank you. So the other clarification that I wanted to make, and this is really in the weeds, but it's very important, is the Corridor Cities Transitway. So in the packet, it's referred to as a random collection of transit improvements collectively referred to as the CCT. That's not what the Corridor Cities Transitway was. The Corridor Cities Transitway was a state-of-the-art BRT designated roadway with right-of-way secured that was on par with the Purple Line at one time. And Purple Line, of course, has gone forward, and the Corridor Cities Transitway has died a very long, slow death. It's important that we understand that when we look at capacity for Clarksburg and the Up-County, that once was going to be the BRT supporting that area. So I just wanted to clarify those two things in the packet. I do think the corridor connectors are important, but they are not BRT, and they're not a one seat from Clarksburg to the Shady Grove Metro. Important. So I want to look at alternatives. And listening to the opposition, which I've listened to for many, many years, and I appreciate Tame's here today. Tame transit alternatives to Mid-County Highway Extended. What transit, right? When we talk about being honest, we have to be honest with the capacity in Clarksburg. What transit are we talking about? One of the transit groups in testimony suggested that removing M83 allows us the opportunity for forward thinking to build transit. We have been talking about this for 20 years. I personally have been talking about this for 20 years, and nothing has been done to improve transit in Clarksburg. We don't have the Corridor Cities Transitway. We don't have BRT on 355. At this point, we don't know when that's going to happen. We don't have increased capacity on I-270. We don't have additional lanes on 355. There are proposals in the packet that I'd forgotten long ago because they weren't moving forward. We don't have Observation Drive yet. I think we have support for that. We don't have the Little Seneca Bridge over I-270. In fact, there is a proposed interchange on I-270 at Little Seneca Parkway, and the draft of the Clarksburg Gateway Master Plan recommends removing that interchange from I-270. We do have ride-on, but as people who live up there know, people who don't live up there don't understand, an hour and 20 minutes to take transit from Clarksburg to here, okay? So we have to be honest about what we're talking about when we talk about transit alternatives to Mid-County Highway Extended. There are no transit options. And when you say yet, why haven't there been in the last 20 years? Okay. So when I do want to talk about the study, the master plan, the master plan of highways and transit calls for a study options of Clarksburg, the corridor. The staff recommends taking it out. I'm adamantly opposed to that. I do want to, I have a proposed amendment, and basically what, so I would like certainty about when this is going to happen. So I'm suggesting that the study state that we're going to do this, that the master plan state that when we're going to do this study of capacity. But it cannot be just a study of whether the existing projects meet the demands of the transportation needs of Clarksburg, because as we know, all these things in the master plan, we don't know if they're ever going to happen, if they're ever going to be built. So I propose that not only do we determine whether there is sufficient master planned transportation capacity to accommodate planned development, but that we need to look at the feasibility and timeline of implementing planned and existing master plan improvements. We can't just say, if it's in the master plan, let's see if we have capacity, because we know that there are many things, as are listed in the packet, that will most likely never happen. So I'm proposing that change.
Thank you. Thank you for all that,
I have
Councilmember.
one more thing after this.
Oh, okay. So if you could just clarify your amendment.
Okay.
Is it to amend the planning board's recommendation, swapping out removal for a feasibility and timeline study?
Exactly. So
Do you want to just read this into the record? Because I'm not sure who.
In, it's page 19 of the master plan, last paragraph. So to ensure that there is sufficient transportation capacity to serve future travel demand in Clarksburg to Germantown corridor, a comprehensive study of travel needs should be conducted in fiscal year 2026 to determine whether there is sufficient master plan transportation capacity to accommodate planned development, and I'm adding, as well as the feasibility and timeline of implementing planned and existing master plan transportation improvements.
Mr. Kenny, for those of us who don't have page 19 before us right now, how does that amend? Okay.
My understanding is that this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that this is not reversing the planning board's recommendation to remove the northern section of M83, but rather this particular amendment would add further specificity and timeline to this recommended study that comes after that, after the recommendation to remove the northern section of M83.
That was the clarification I was looking for. So,
I'm trying to sneak it in.
Yeah. So as the amendment notes, studying the feasibility and timeline for that general area, which is the Clarksburg to Germantown corridor. Okay.
I'm good with that. Yeah. Do you need a second?
Well, I'm okay.
Or
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah.
if you had any comments you
No.
meant.
Yeah, okay.
None of that.
Great. I think we're all in agreement
Okay.
then.
I have one, oh, sorry.
Did you have any comments?
Well, I think it might.
On the amendment, yeah.
I will.
No, go ahead. So I'm sure that I'm not going to put words into Director Sartori's
We're going to talk about the workflow now.
Capacity and workflow.
Yes, that's right.
okay.
That's right.
So I've had conversations in terms of, I understand that we can't just make a demand that something's going to happen given current budget. I will be introducing a supplemental to cover the cost of this study.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
I've got one.
I have a question, though.
Yeah.
Sorry. Since it's not, this is more, and we can clarify this before it goes to full council, since it is not in your work plan and the supplemental hasn't been introduced yet, and this is going to come before the full council for a vote beforehand, I just want to figure out the logistics of adding this amendment requiring something for fiscal year 2026 that has not been budgeted yet. So that's just a
Well
note.
stated, Madam President.
So logistically, I'm not sure how we do that. And so since we just got this today, I think we just need to clarify that before it comes to full council.
Yes, council staff will coordinate with planning staff and all relevant parties before full council.
Yep.
If I could, I'd add that is even the big question that we're talking about here. Things that are planned but not yet funded. What is the interplay between them all? That's the big question. I appreciate you articulating it. Yes, you need to know that for sure. Thank you.
If I could recommend, maybe what could be done to satisfy the logistical issue is just simply removing the reference to fiscal year 2026. And then the council makes it happen in fiscal year 2026 with the adoption of the supplemental.
One last.
Do you want to make that?
Yes, I will make that amendment to delete the reference to fiscal year 2026.
Great. So without objection.
Thank you. Just one last comment, I promise. On page 137, I'm going to pass it down. So one of the constant comments that we heard from the opponents is that, including MCDOT and the Planning Board, is that leaving M83 in this master plan sets up false promises and gives false hope to the community. We also heard today that we need to be honest with the community about what we're going to do. But in this master plan, we are going to add Metro Red Line to Germantown and the third track to the Mark Brunswick line, another project that I've been working on for 20 years. So we're taking out a master planned road with right-of-way that we've been looking at for 50 years, and we're going to talk about that we're going to have these magical transit options of Red Line to Germantown and a third rail to Mark. And when I read that, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry of the absurdity of that statement. So I would like to make a motion to retain M83 from the master plan, in the master plan.
Okay. Is there a second? There's no second.
Okay, I'm done. With this section.
I understand. We got more to go. Appreciate all of your comments, and I'm really glad that you're here to have been able to speak for 21 minutes instead of just 3. And you're articulating the broader transportation concerns are real. I will share personally that when we first started discussing BRT on 355 way back when, I long advocated that the northern part of Montgomery County along 355 be the first segment. It's on the record. The county executive felt otherwise and talked about the funding and the economic activity being needed in the middle section of 355, and so the council as a whole agreed. But from this dais here on the 7th floor, a number of times, I have said that if 270 remains a problem, if Corridor Cities Transit Way is not being built, if M83 is not being built, there needs to be something, and if we keep talking about transit, we need to do transit. So let's work maybe in the next CIP to make sure that the northern section of 355 gets the transit that everyone agrees is absolutely needed. Council President Stewart.
Thanks. I don't want to talk about the points that have already been made, but as folks know, I'm going to, as I have, support the Planning Board's recommendation to remove M83, and I just want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Balcom, for her advocacy for her district and the residents there, because there have been a lot of promises, and we need to make sure that we follow through. And I commit, as I think my colleague, the chair, has as well, to work on these issues with you moving forward. As we've talked about, though, for M83, we did have a prior council resolution on this. And one thing that hasn't been talked about today, but we've talked about before, is the fact that the Transportation Planning Board, the Regional Planning Board, in Visualize 2024, a long-range transportation plan for the region, removed M83 from that. So I think that's just important for us to know as well, because when we're talking about funding of projects, and we did have the list here, thank you, Mr. Kenny, lots of times we do look at federal money to fund these projects. And if this was removed from the regional transit plan, that basically means even once we do get better administration in the White House, there is basically a zero chance we're getting federal dollars for this. And so I think it's also being realistic about what we can and cannot fund, looking at the county and looking at federal dollars and the potential of state dollars for this project. So I think that was the Transportation Planning Board taking that action more recently, I think, is another piece of this in this ongoing conversation about M83. I do also want to just thank Ms. Aldridge and the Planning Department. I appreciate you adding time to hear from residents as this came up. This was one of the things that, since this is not the part of the county I represent, folks reached out to me early on, and I was able to listen to both favor and opposition on this, and I just want to say I really appreciate the time everyone has taken to really look at this and study it, but I do think the time is now for us to say that this is not the project for this area for us moving forward for many reasons. And so, again, I appreciate the frustration from folks in this region and really commit to working with our transportation department and others and with my council colleagues to really look at how we provide for the transit needs in this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
I want to just say, Councilmember Balcom, you should know that the board really heard your constituents in Germantown and Clarksburg, and that is why we put in that recommendation to do this study. So we heard, we were there, we heard, and we know that there are some issues that we want to solve, and so that's why we put that recommendation in. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we wrap up this section, I just want to say that over the weekend I did drive down Mid-County Highway and drove up to Montgomery Village Avenue, the terminus of the existing area. And what actually struck me was that there were two people walking on the side of the highway because there were no sidewalks there. Entirely different conversation. But when we talk about connectivity and making that area safe, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the existing road, full stop. And as a native New Yorker, this reminds me a lot about conversations of Robert Moses, who had lots of designs throughout the entire New York region. Hundreds of miles of highways going every which way through every topography, and many of them came to fruition, but a lot of them didn't, and that was a good thing because they weren't necessarily good for the either community or the natural environment. And the case here is this project was proposed more than 60 years ago, has received 35 years of research and of analysis. There is zero funding for it locally, from the state, from the Council of Governments or the federal government. And so, yes, focus needs to be put on what can be done and what should be done. And I'd like to put our focus towards those goals. And for that, I will support the Planning Board's recommendation for what we'll call Section 5A2. We'll take a formal vote. All those in support of that recommendation? All those opposed? Okay. Thank you for the important conversation, the honest conversation, and we're not done with it. So thank you. With that, let's keep moving forward.
Briefly, just hoping I can confirm where the committee landed on the language regarding the study. This is Councilmember Balcom's amendment, but without the component specifying fiscal year 2026. That's correct? Thank you. Moving on to recommendation 5B. I have council staff has some language in here, about why these changes to target speeds and planned lanes are required. But I think planning staff did a really good job with their presentation, so we can, that what we heard before about target speeds and road types and classifications and land use contexts is what is driving these 90 pages of changes to target speeds and classifications. This comes from the Complete Streets Design Guide as well as other county policies. Tables 6 and 7 on page 10 of the staff report summarize the breakdown of road segments by target speed and classification. These are technical changes that follow from previous policies that were passed. However, there is one change that does not fall into this bucket. These are segments of Wisteria Drive and Waring Station Road in Germantown. There are these segments are described on page 24 of the plan update and on page 10 of the staff report. These segments are planned for 4 lanes, but do not have the master plan right-of-way to expand to 4 lanes and are functioning well in their current alignment. So the plan recommends reducing them from 4 to 2 lanes, reclassifying them as area connectors, and assigning a target speed of 25 miles per hour. So that's the change to those two roads. The remaining roads are summarized from pages 26 or 20, page 30 to 114 of the plan. This is a long table where these changes are summarized. After the planning board's transmittal of the update of the technical update, planning staff reached out to council staff regarding some possible changes summarized in table 8 on page 11 of the staff report to some of the roads classified as parkways in the plan. In the 2018 technical update, the council set on the course of removing parkways from the master plan on highways and transit ways, since the plan focuses primarily on vehicle throughput, and the stated technical purpose of parkways is for enjoyment of parks, which is why Sligo Creek and other parkways were removed. There are some that remain that are summarized in table 8. Cabin John Parkway, Clara Barton Parkway, Josiah Henson Parkway, and Montrose Parkway. Planning is recommending. Planning staff has put forward a recommendation to the council to reclassify these as either freeways or boulevards, or to remove them from the plan, basically to affirm their used and practical purpose, and to conform with what the council has done with other parkways. So I'm happy to summarize these changes if we would like, but council staff also recommends giving some time prior to full council to give the Department of Transportation some more time to review these changes, as this was happening kind of quickly in the weeks preceding this work session.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. I was going to ask about MCDOT's thoughts on this, but more broadly, the speed limit changes. Can someone speak to what the practical effects of that might be?
Sure. So the parkways were not included in the Complete Streets Design Guide, so there is no established target speed for them. Typically, parkways have posted speed limits generally in the range of like 35 to 40. So I would say in general, the streets that would convert to a boulevard, it would tend to lower those slightly. The boulevard target speed is 35. And I think the idea is that when you're in a parkway, you're traveling for long stretches, you don't have side street interruptions, so drivers tend to drive a little faster. And so, but I think based on when we started to look at the land use context, we feel like many of these streets are so short that they're effectively, they can continue to operate as boulevards.
Thank you for that. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Ms. Peckett, I just wanted to know, do you know how long it'll take DOT to review this? I'm just thinking of scheduling.
Pretty quickly. I think that we're conceptually fine with all of these and just want to look especially at Josiah Henson in terms of some of the development and the intersection spacing in that area.
Great, thank you.
It is great having the council president on the committee, making sure the trains run on time. Thank you. So without objection, we'll accept that recommendation. Yep. And clearly contingent on future discussion with MCDOT. Thank you, Ms. Peckett.
Thank you. Moving on to recommendation 5C. This is the addition or removal of transitways in the plan. This is proposing the removal of 3 transitways, the Intercounty Connector Transitway, Metro Access Road, and North Bethesda Tuckerman Lane alternate route, and the addition of transitways on Castle Boulevard on US 29, and an addition of a transitway in White Oak to access the FDA site. The justifications for each of these are included in the staff report. I'm happy to walk through them if that would be helpful, but that is the overview of the recommendation.
I see all of this, and again, this is maybe not the same size and scope of the conversation we just had, but it is yet another reminder that there are sometimes projects that are put into master plans and that are conceived that are not necessarily needed as time moves on. I accept these recommendations.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, these are due to updated DOT planning. So yes, moving on to recommendation 5D, the addition or removal of transit stations. This recommendation would, on the Maryland 355 BRT, add 9 stations and remove 8. On US 29, it would add 5 stations and remove 1. And on the Veers Mill BRT, this would add 1 station, an eastbound and westbound station at Robindale Drive. These are essentially the implementation and reflect the planning done by MCDOT on each of these BRT routes and their specific alignments, just making the plan is consistent with those.
Thank you. So just to clarify, Ms. Peckett, these are MCDOT recommendations that the planning department adopted?
Correct.
Great. Works for me.
Yep.
Without objection.
Moving on to recommendation 5E. This is the creation of the Growth Corridor Boulevard street type. This was also touched on well in the planning staff's presentation earlier. Essentially, if we could maybe go back to that slide just for the sake of a visual aid. And as we are, the growth corridor, so the growth corridors envisioned in Thrive, this recommendation would apply a street type that would apply a downtown-like street type further along our corridors, essentially acknowledging that the corridors like Georgia Avenue, Veers Mill Road, University Boulevard, and others are not just connectors between our centers of growth, but are themselves centers of growth, and so provide more, the growth corridor boulevard street type would apply more pedestrian-friendly street design elements, such as closer together crossings and better tools available for traffic calming and other devices along these corridors. The corridors that would be eligible for this are not necessarily the ones drawn on that map that is included in Thrive, but are rather will be identified by land use context, medium to high, or higher density and connectivity. And also this recommendation does not change any streets segments itself, but rather provides this street type as a classification tool that the planning board and council may use in future master plans as it does corridor master plans to address these issues. And council staff recommends concurring with the planning board recommendation.
With that objection, we'll agree.
Thank you. And finally, recommendation 5F is a summary of the master plan on highways and transitways. This is essentially, this is the map that was included earlier as Councilmember Balcom, or the map on page 138 of the update. As Councilmember Balcom noted earlier, this map includes now the third tracking for Mark Brunswick line and the Metro Rail expansion of the red line between Shady Grove and Germantown Mark Station, as identified in I-270 Corridor Forward Master Plan. There are a number of, or there are some errors on the map, some technical errors that were identified post-transmittal that council staff is recommending the committee, is suggesting that the committee recommend changing with the adoption of the full technical update by full council. These are removing certain portions of the Maryland 355 North BRT, as the Snowden Farm Parkway alignment has been the one that was has been put forward, making the North Bethesda BRT a solid line along Old Georgetown Road rather than an alternate, as that is, again, also the alternative that is moving forward, and then removing corridor numbers from the legend, as those are obsolete. These are technical items, but ones that were identified.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. And I want to thank Councilmember Balcom for bringing this point up earlier, because she's absolutely right that there is not much likelihood at this point in time that either a third line of the Mark Brunswick mark is going to materialize, and probably even less likely that a red line gets extended. Not my thoughts, the thoughts of the general manager, Randy Clark. So question for planning. The inclusion of this is what?
I'll note the two recommendations were approved as part of previous master plans. So the third tracking for the Mark Brunswick line was approved in the 2013 countywide transit corridors functional master plan. That's the BRT plan, and the Metro Rail extension extension was part of the Corridor Forward Plan that was approved in 2022. So I think we're just reflecting those previous actions that were taken.
And any sector master plan, any development plan, I'll get to you, Ms. Peck, in a sec. These are not, future consideration in development is not predicated on these materializing, correct? These are aspirational notations?
We would include these recommendations when we evaluate future master plans. Mr. Brockmeyer, I don't know if you want to speak more to that, but our standard practice is to incorporate all master planned transportation infrastructure in our evaluations.
Thanks for the record, Richard Brockmeyer. Yeah, we would include that in our travel demand modeling forecasts. Those infrastructure improvements would be included.
So, yeah, I know what I did. I know it. So, we many years ago removed M83 from planning consideration, but we are leaving in a red line extension to Germantown for planning consideration. Is that what I've just heard?
Well, yeah, yes, and that's because it was one of the recommendations in the relatively recently adopted Corridor Forward Plan.
Ms. Peckett.
So may I make a suggestion? I don't have these plans in front of me, but MTA created a vision document, I believe was just published last year, and I believe it does talk about the third line. They don't have funding, but there is a recent plan. I would recommend that we look at the most recent plan from MTA and the most recent plan, the Blue Orange Silver Line study that came out 2023, I believe, from WMATA. They have some justification in there about why blue, orange, silver, and not red. So it may be helpful to look at the funding agencies and some of those documents, as well as, again, maybe the visualized 2050, I think it's 2050 and not 2040, when considering, I mean, we're not making this recommendation from MCDOT, it's from the planning board, but I just might bring those into our consideration before changing something here.
I very much like consistency, and at least with the M83 conversation, that was our decision to make, and make it we just did, at least at the committee level. The others are not our decisions to make, but the stakeholders of those agencies and departments at various levels have indicated that none of that is happening right now. And so I would want this document to reflect the reality as it exists. I understand the aspirational, and trust me, no one would like Mark Rail extended, or third line and the red line extended more than me, more than any of us. But that's not the case, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. Can we include this in our follow-up to see if this needs to be massaged in some way before it comes to the full council?
Yeah, I'm partly thinking that something that might help here is some direction from the council in terms of how we evaluate that, those evaluations that we do for master plans. If we're looking a certain number of years out, I think we typically go to 2050 right now, that we not include, okay, I'm thinking of like another 2017 resolution from the board, from the council, telling us to only include them when you're looking for further out, but don't include them in an analysis that might be through 2050. If the expectation is that these things, the red line extension is not something we envision by 2050. We have it in our master plans. We want to keep it in our master plans to say this is aspirational. However, if we're evaluating another master plan against this, if for 2050, don't include this because that's not realistic for 2050. So we could work on it.
I just want to be clear. It's not my opinion. It's the general manager who has said there is no extension that's coming. And so take his word for it, take WMATA's word for it. And so would I like it to come? Absolutely. Tomorrow, yesterday, right? But as we go through this process, eyes wide open on what the realities are.
Can I just say one thing? I like what Director Sartori said, that we may not include it in any analysis, but it's your call. But by having something referenced, even if it's aspiration, would it help at all if any future funding, in case the spigot turned on and you could say we at least have in our master plan, but we won't. I'm somewhat new to the but just I don't know. It's more of a.
Well, so that was the initial question, right? Having this language in here, what does that allow? And if it allows other plans to be developed with the assumption that this is happening, that gets us into the predicament that we're in now, because we didn't talk about it, because I think it's well documented, the development of Clarksburg to begin with, right?
Right, but I'm not asking for that. Right. I know that, but we won't include it for any calculations of roadway, capacity. We get that direction. Yeah. If we get that direction from you, but it's still if it's helpful to you to have something that potentially could get funding for the future, then. But if it's not helpful to you, then take it out. It's your call.
If I can just add to that, and you haven't provided this direction, I don't think yet, but if the red line extension is removed from the master plan, then we won't get a red line extension. We understand that it's a very distant recommendation. It's not funded. The current general manager is saying that it's not going to move forward. But if we remove it, it will certainly not happen. We could also take an approach where, like the 2017 recommendation, we assume that the red line extension is not present when we evaluate master plans. That seems to be closer to where you're headed, I think.
That's right. I mean, the commonality here are what some people have termed phantom projects, right? That they might be on the books, they might be talked about, but the likelihood of them becoming a reality is light years away, if ever. Again, that's the central conversation we're having today about M83 after 60-plus years of talking about it. These projects, one could debate, are newer and more relevant, these transit projects, but nonetheless, the agencies of jurisdiction know they are not happening anytime soon. Ms. Peck?
The last thing I was going to add was going to be right-of-way. Again, I don't want to be endorsing phantom projects either, but should there be opportunities in the future, I think maybe more so for the third line, if there's opportunities to get right-of-way out of future large development projects, you may want to consider that.
We don't want to impede the likelihood of these happening.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I guess I see it a little differently than M83 because that M83 is solely us and whether or not we move forward with it. And because the Transportation Planning Board took it out of the regional planning document, it is truly ours to hold. What WMATA does and what MARC Rail does is not within our control, and I think we need to continue to advocate for those things. I think even if it is being said now that we're not going to see the extension of the red line to Germantown, I still want to see that. And I still plan on saying that to Randy Clark, even if he tells me it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I'd like to know that our master plan on this reflects that view. Same thing with MARC. We've been working on MARC. Delegate Jared Solomon's been working on MARC tirelessly. We're seeing some glimmers of maybe hope here and there. But I do see this section as very different because this is our advocacy section. This is the section where we're saying here in Montgomery County, we want this to happen. And we want to make a commitment to that. If we take this out, then when we're having conversations with WMATA or Randy Clark, like, why then we're not having any conversation or any place to start from? When we're working with our state delegation and all the tireless work they're doing to try and move MARC Rail, where are we saying our skin is in the game? This is where we can point to say our skin is in the game on these two issues. And I see it as completely different from M83.
We're saying the same thing, just different ways, but yes.
I completely agree with that. I'm going to put a little button there, but so I think that that the point of having it in there as aspirational is great, but with the caveat that we can't use the capacity when we look at master plans. We have 2 master plans going on right now, both of which are critical to this. We've got the Clarksburg Gateway Master Plan and the Germantown Town Sector Master Plan, both happening right now. Both of these projects would impact the capacity on both of those projects. So we don't want to get in the situation. I mean, Clarksburg was predicated on M83, period. Whether we want to rewrite history or not, that capacity was critical to the growth of Clarksburg. We can't look at future growth in the Up County assuming that both of these things are going to happen. Yes, I mean, I've had the third rail of MARC on the top of my priority list in my prior job forever, along with M83. And of course, when the I-270 Corridor Forward Transit Plan came out, I was thrilled that the red line was in there as an aspirational, let's put the flag out there. But whatever wording we need to use, that it's not part of the capacity. I just have one clarifying question. Because they're both currently in master plans, are we already using this capacity in looking at looking at master plans?
We've been talking back and forth. The red line is not the red line extension is not being used. It's a relatively more recent recommendation, and so that was not incorporated into our model. We're not sure about the MARC rail. We'll need to go back and check that.
Yeah, I think that's important because you know, the MARC, it's part of its money, but you know, the CSX has not been willing to cooperate for as long as I know. So appreciate that.
So it sounds like we're all in agreement, saying the same thing in possibly different ways, but Mr. Ansbacher, what you just noted was the heart of my question. Mm-hmm. Whether or not future development projects in Germantown are predicated or are done with the assumption that the red line is being extended, because all that would do is put us in a different yet similar situation where development is occurring, people are moving, and the red line is not materializing. Okay. We absolutely want the red line to go. Yeah. We're all in agreement with that. And if keeping it in as is allows all of this to be maintained, yet also provides the future growth there without being predicated on that, right? Again, this is the chicken or the egg scenario. I think that would satisfy me, but we can talk a little bit more before this goes to full council.
I just have one clarifying question. Ms. Peckett, you brought up the right-of-way. So I just want to separate out having it in master plans in terms of capacity, but then making sure that we're still holding the right-of-way so that if in the future we're able to do these projects, we're not then inhibited because we've given up right-of-way. Can we make sure those two things are separate?
If they remain in our master plans, then we can continue to pursue the right-of-way and maintain the right-of-way. Yeah.
Okay.
And so with my very simple question at the beginning, I think we've answered it with Mr. Ansbacher at least saying that the red line, the aspirational goal of the red line, is not reflected in the planning decisions of today. Is that correct?
To date.
Right?
Yes.
That was the question. To date, yes. To date. Okay. Duly noted. Any other comments on this?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we will accept this recommendation without objection. And Mr. Kenny, that's it?
That's it.
Thank you to the Planning Department and Planning Board and MCDOT. Thank you to all the residents who attended all of the forums in the community, at the planning board, here at the council, there are a lot of decisions that have been made over the years that need constant review and evaluation. And I think what we're seeing today, from the conversation about M83 to this conversation about Mark Train and the red line realities, these are ongoing discussions, but I think we all agree that transportation needs have to be met for our up-county residents, and we will continue working towards that goal. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.